Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to be doing another Kubernetes demo today, and this is going to be one out of the QuickStart guides from Google. If you have not played with any of these, basically they accompany product documentation. Typically, you can look for QuickStart to get you up and running fairly quickly, obviously. Depending on the order, you might see this one or the Spring Boot application code lab first. Basically, they're both intended to be kind of demos getting you up and running with Kubernetes. This one is more generic, like we're not going to necessarily care about the Java application specifically. We are going to be using in a pre-existing, it's like a hello world type of application for Google Cloud. And I'll put the link in the description to this particular guide. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get up and running. Now, I am just kind of trying to enable Kubernetes off screen while I talk. Now let's flip over and there we go. So Kubernetes Engine API, getting started. I've got a Cloud Shell provisioned. I have my quick start guide here, and I'm going to keep it off screen so that we can see as much as possible. Now, what we need is a project, we need billing, we need the API to be enabled, so we should be good to go. And let's also make sure that our compute engine is up and running as well, because I'm pretty sure it's going to need that. Yeah, so we are good here. This one takes like 5 minutes to get up and running. Now this quick start, they give you instructions for Cloud Shell or Local Shell, which is nice if you want to work locally. I would definitely recommend at some point getting used to working locally so you're not tied to the Cloud Shell here. I'm going to use the Cloud Shell just out of ease of use. That way, I don't have to set up credentials or anything locally, but it's not that hard. Basically, make a service account, create a key, download it, point an environment variable at that, and you are good to go. It's pretty straightforward, honestly. So we need some default settings here. I'm just kind of going through the lab. We need a project ID, which we see we have set here in yellow. Should match our example here. So this is also, we're doing some Docker stuff here as well. We need a zone, and I'm going to set my zone, and this is going to gcloud config set compute slash zone US East 4A. See if that one works. Depending on the gcloud command we're running, it's either going to say, did you actually mean this region, or it's going to just die horribly. So we're just going to set this early on. The guide says use US West 1A. I just picked US East 4A because I know that exists. Otherwise, you could do a quick lookup with gcloud config. So first things first, let's create a cluster. So gcloud container clusters, I can spell clusters, create GKE demo 680, and we'll give it one worker node. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and spin up. GKE demo, okay, I keep forgetting they really, really like their lowercase name. So GKE demo. All right, so we have that going. We're going to need to get some authentication credentials for this cluster once it is configured. So let's go over to the Kubernetes page for clusters, and we should see this one spinning up. We don't want to do autopilot currently. Basically, we are going to just do a basic cluster here, autopilot. I mean, some of these features you can read through on your own time if you would like. Basically, Google's going to do a little bit more management, which also means you're going to pay a little bit more. So we will ignore that for now. How do we hide you? There we go. There's even a guide in the Google QuickStart for getting up and running with autopilot if you would like as well. And once this is done, provisioning, being health checked, again, making sure that the nodes are alive and that they can be spoken with, we are going to start using the kube control command. This is the Google Cloud Kubernetes engine specific command that we will use on the shell. And this is the command that you would use locally as well if you are running locally. Health check takes a few minutes, so I will be back once that is done provisioning. So we see that our cluster is up and running. We see that we have a IP address that we can access it with. There's nothing currently on it, obviously, right? It's just a cluster, but we'll be using it to run a Hello World application. Now, if you recall, there is the gcr.io container registry. So that is, again, it's basically like our Docker registry where you can pull images from. We're going to pull a Hello World application, and we're going to use the kubectl command to do that. So we're going to do kubectl create deployment. Get this off screen. Thank you. Hello server. And the image equals gcr.io/Google samples. And if you are not quite remembering, because it's been quite the semester, gcr.io, this is our cloud build and cloud run thing that we've been using multiple times here. You know, you can build your own containers, push them up to the registry and run them. We've probably done that 5 to 10 times at least by this point in the semester. So we're going to create a deployment called Hello Server, pull this demo app. Again, you could create your own and pull that as well, but let's do that. So we have our Hello Server created. Basically, this deployment is going to have a pod. If you remember pods and all of that kind of fun stuff, the Kubernetes architecture, pod's basically in charge of managing a container. So now what we have to do is expose the deployment so that we can actually access this thing, because right now it is not accessible publicly. Internally, yes, if we were to, query it internally, we should be able to see it, but let's go ahead and expose that. So kubectl expose deployment, hello server. We want a load balanced, so load balancer, port 80, and route it to 8080. Okay, so I spelled kubectl wrong. I've not had enough coffee today. Okay, so it has been exposed. We should now have a publicly accessible thing to check out. Now, how do we see that? Well, we can do kubectl get pods. Here's my load balance server. It is alive. And now let's inspect it with kubectl get service hello server. Oh, wow, this is a day, huh? Get rid of the R. Okay, external IP is pending. Now again, these IPs are dynamically assigned. It will take a few moments for it to be provisioned, and then we should be able to just go ahead and check it out. Okay, here we go. I have an IP address. We see port 80, so we should be able to just go right there and see our hello world. And I forgot the one. Hello world, how about that? We have a container. Now, what can we do with this? Well, we could take our image, we could actually make it do something interesting, so build your own. We could update the number of nodes, the number of CPUs, the number of, or amount of memory for a cluster, have it run an actual real world job, treat it like a compute cluster type of a thing. We could have it do pretty much whatever we want. We can also, let's go ahead and edit, and we can look at some of the options here. We can play around with pod locations. We can play around with maintenance possibilities. Do we want any kind of load balancing? Do we want caching? We can add in security. Pretty much everything is disabled except for the fact that they're shielded care of Google. We can add in Anthos. We can do tensor processing units. If we want to do some kind of machine learning on here, we can mess around with our nodes. Effectively, we have a lot of options. And remember, with Kubernetes, we have the ability to scale up, scale down. We can add extra replicas. There's lots of ways you could take this, right? And the idea is that Kubernetes, this is the orchestration aspect of it. So I hope this was helpful for you all. Nice short demo for once. I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.